A very good morning to one and all present. I am Vidupriya Chakravarti, Secretary, Diocesan Education Society, Diocese of Amritsar, and the Principal of St. Thomas's School, Shimla. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all today to this webinar on decoding the new education policy and way forward. The webinar has been organized by the Diocese of Amritsar Church of North India in collaboration with ICS Education Limited. I wish to take this opportunity to introduce to you all our esteemed panelists for the day. We have with us the Most Reverend Dr. Pradeep Kumar Samantaroy, the Bishop of Amritsar, Church of North India, and the Chairperson, Diocesan Education Association, Diocese of Amritsar. Mrs. Sunita John, the Director of Auckland House School Society, Dr. Amrita Das, renowned educationist and career consultant. Once again, a very warm welcome to all stakeholders present this morning. And it is my honor and a privilege to introduce to you all our resource person for the day, Dr. Amrita Das. Dr. Amrita Das is a leading educationist and career consultant of the country. She is the founder director of ICS International, established in 1985, and has the distinction of pioneering the career counseling and guidance services in India. She is also the chairperson and managing director of ICS Education Limited. ICS has conducted career counseling programs in more than 500 schools, colleges, professional institutes, and universities in India and abroad. It has been recognized with the Times Group Award for Excellence in Education. Dr. Das has had a meritorious academic background. She taught the Lucknow University and was awarded 2 gold medals. Thereafter, she pursued her doctoral studies at the University of Lucknow and London University as a fellow of the Indian Council of Historical Research. She has participated in many international conferences such as the UN Social Summit Denmark, UN Conference on Women China, the State of the World Forum USA, Global Knowledge Partnership Malaysia by the World Bank. She has visited universities the world all over, latest being in 2019 when she was invited by the Graduate School of International Development, Nagoya University, Japan, as a guest speaker to address the students on the topic being future ready in a VUCA world. Dr. Das is a consultant for a number of leading schools of the country and has served on the boards of many prestigious public schools in India. She is currently a board member of renowned Awadh Girls Postgraduate College, Lucknow, besides being on the boards of Auckland House School, Shimla, Bishop Cotton School, Shimla, and Nirmal Bhartiya School, New Delhi. A multifaceted personality, she has been an advisor to SIDBI, Member Steering Committee on Women and Child Development Planning Commission 9th 5-year plan, and an ex officio director of the State Bank of India. Lately, she has also been nominated in the steering committee of the UP government for the implementation of the new education policy. She has also designed and numerous training programs on leadership in education for edu leaders, on excellence in education for teachers, and on leadership and management for NGOs and corporates. As a columnist for many prominent newspapers of the country, Dr. Das writes on a wide range of educational, career, and leadership issues. Known for the deep knowledge, insights, and futuristic vision, Dr. Das has recently organized 2 conferences on education and careers, bringing together all stakeholders to make our students future ready. These were the first events of their kind to be held in the world. Her professional and philanthropic contributions have received many accolades. Dr. Das is the recipient of the Lions Club Award for Outstanding Social Work, the Rotary Award for Vocational Excellence, TCS Women Achiever of the Year Award, and the Outstanding Woman Achiever for the award by the Lucknow Management Association. Her biography has included in the Who's in Who in the World 2015 for exemplary contribution in the fields of education and career guidance. In February 2020, Dr. Das was featured on the cover page of CEO Insights magazine as a trailblazer, guiding the nation towards an enlightened destiny. So welcome, Dr. Das, and over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The Most Reverend Bishop Samantha Roy, Mrs. Vidhupriya Chakravarti, Mrs. Sunita John, eminent participants who include heads of schools, principals, educationists, teachers, counselors. It's an immense pleasure for me, an honor to be with you all today for this very important session. We are delighted to inform you that over 60 schools are represented here today from across the country, right from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, right from the west, that is, we have schools from Amritsar to the northeast and east. So it's an amazing spread of schools, and all of these schools represent leadership in education. All of these schools will find reflections in the new education policy, which they have already implemented. So now I'll briefly give you a perspective of how this new education policy came about. It is in fact the third policy since independence. The first new education policy was initiated in 1968 by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, based on the famous Kothari Commission report. I remember as a student at Isabella Thuban College, studying education as one of my subjects, being enthralled by the opening statement of the Kothari Commission report, which said, "The destiny of India is being shaped in her classroom." That resonated with me then, and it continues to resonate with me, that the destiny of India is being shaped in her classroom, and all of us as educators have such an important role to play. Now, that policy recommended radical restructuring of education, which was in shambles after independence. It also recommended equal opportunity for all, compulsory education till the age of 14 as per the constitutional guidelines, and allocation of 6% of our gross national product for education. Unfortunately, this was not done till recently. And as a result, there has been a big gap between some top private schools like ours and government schools, which just don't have the infrastructure or the capacity to hire the best teachers. 20 years later, we got the second education policy under the leadership of Rajiv Gandhi. Here again, equal opportunity for all was emphasized, and very importantly, Operation Blackboard, to ensure that every student went to school no matter where that student lived. The remotest village would have Operation Blackboard to improve primary schools nationwide. Also, at the other end of the spectrum, the open university system was introduced and IGNOU was established. It also proposed a rural university model, but this has not yet been established. Once again, 6% allocation was recommended, which never happened. This policy was modified by Mr. Narasimha Rao, and in 2005, Mr. Manmohan Singh further modified it, wherein the main development was the introduction of a common entrance exam for all professional and technical programs. Then we had the consultation process launched in the last 2 years for the new education policy which we have today. What I want to emphasize is that there was a nationwide consultative process which brought in all stakeholders, every possible group. The government continued to advertise and announce and request people to send their suggestions. After all these suggestions were received, a draft was prepared. That draft was circulated. Further inputs were invited. So 2 years ago, Institute for Career Studies, along with the Nath Valley School, Aurangabad, held a principals consultation to look at what Education 4.0 should look like. Education 4.0 being in alignment with the fourth industrial revolution driven by artificial intelligence, our world today. And we designed a lot of recommendations. And I'm delighted to see that most of them are reflected in terms of the teaching learning process in the new education policy. And that is so fascinating. I mean, it almost like a lot of what we recommended has just flown into this policy. And this is to show that the government indeed took cognizance of recommendations that came from all over. Now, as I'm on the steering committee, I also want to share that the implementation is going to be through a consultative process. Education is a concurrent subject, so it's both on the union list as well as the state list. So while the union government has designed this policy, it's the states who are going to implement it. So for the implementation, there's a task force, there's steering committees looking into each and every aspect of the policy. And for the implementation, we have a very good opportunity to give inputs at every level. And the government is inviting transparency, consultation, involvement. So this is a time all of us should see and examine and analyze what is it that we can do to contribute for the best possible implementation of the policy. We will now look at the key elements of the policy, and I request my colleague Pooja Ahuja to take us through the presentation. So the most exciting part of the new education policy is the introduction of innovative pedagogies with a reduction of the curriculum to core concepts, and this is to be implemented within 2 years. Now, the innovative pedagogies, which will transform the teaching learning process, include experiential learning and discovery-based teaching learning methods. Equal weightage between curricular, co-curricular, extra-curricular activities. It is not that the focus will be just on academics. Students are good at co-curricular, curricular will also be assessed and given their due credit, which was not happening presently. They were kind of marginalized. There'll be freedom of choosing subject combinations. So students will have to be guided here. Then there'll be an integrated pedagogy of arts, sports, storytelling, ICT integration. There'll be Bagless days where students will do a lot of skill training and they will have out of the classroom experiences. There'll be promotion of peer tutoring, which is an excellent idea, where students who are good at their subjects are able to impart knowledge to others. There'll be use and integration of technology in education for blended learning. So in the experiential learning, what has been emphasized is that there will be art integration, that is various forms of art and culture, as well as sports integration, which means cross-curriculum pedagogical approach. No silos among these. So if we were to summarize, there's going to be emphasis on conceptual understanding rather than exam-based rote learning. Critical thinking and creativity, experiential learning with fun-filled, creative, collaborative, and exploratory activities, interactive classes with reduced dependency on textbooks. Where textbooks are concerned, I want to point out that the NCERT is going to design the best possible textbooks in different languages. And they have also stated that they would love the expertise of authors, of educationists in specific subjects to contribute here. So they're calling for expertise. It's not going to be just an autonomous exercise of NCERT. And I think we should contribute here in this whole process. Emphasis on moral and ethical reasoning and learning. We used to have moral science. It was such a useful subject. It went out, and with it, the ethical foundations of integrity. So now there is going to be moral and ethical reasoning, development of scientific temper. That's also very important. Now here, the medium of instruction will be in the mother tongue or local language till grade 5 to overcome the language barrier in learning. Teachers will have to be bilingual. That's an important point. However, it clearly states that this is not mandatory. This is not mandatory. So there's an element of flexibility, need-based flexibility. And I would like to share with you that Pallikudam School, founded by Mrs. Mary Roy, which is in Kottayam, and we go there regularly, they teach students in the mother tongue of Malayalam till grade 2. After grade 2, they introduce English, but they gradually phase out the mother tongue. And after grade 5, it's all in English. And the students here are doing brilliantly because their foundation was in their mother tongue. And that is what was needed. And then they picked up English. So they're fluent in their mother tongue. They're fluent in English. They're fluent in Hindi or some foreign language. So teaching the mother tongue, depending on the situation, till grade 5 is actually a very good idea. And then introduce English and other subjects. But again, they say this is not mandatory. What this will require is professional development programs for teachers for acquiring the necessary skills at all levels. And this will be an ongoing process. So whereas there will be a structure to initiate a lot of training programs, every school will have flexibility to design its own training programs, to have its own resource persons. Regarding minimum qualifications for teaching, by 2030, a 4-year integrated B.Ed degree will be introduced. That is, straight after +2, a student could go in for a 4-year integrated B.Ed degree. But in addition to that, there will be other pathways to do B.Ed, which I'll just show you. So for teacher education, as I said, there'll be this 4-year integrated B.Ed and the minimum degree qualification for teachers by 2030. However, there'll also be a 2-year B.Ed. So for students who are doing a 3-year bachelor's course, they'll have a 2-year B.Ed. And for students who are doing a 4-year bachelor's course, for instance, B.Tech is a 4-year course. Many honors programs are 4-year courses. There'll be a 1-year B.Ed. So this is a very flexible approach to the B.Ed. What is more, every college and university will have to have a B.Ed facility. So it's going to be very, very well structured. And we go back now to the next important point, that for recruitment of teachers, even in private schools, There will be teacher eligibility tests. There'll be demonstration interviews. So private schools as well as government schools will have to hire teachers based on the teacher eligibility test. Just like presently, you have the UGC NET. However, it also states that schools could hire experts with proven abilities in their subjects to deliver classes. So that proviso is also there, that you can hire experts from your local areas or anywhere else who has abilities in that subject to also participate in the teaching learning process. Then there's emphasis on providing interdisciplinary choices. There are going to be no silos of art, science, and commerce. I want to share with you that this provision actually came into being over 10 years ago because CBSE and ISC allowed interdisciplinarity, and we advised many schools to bring it in because it enhanced a student's educational experience as well as employability possibilities. So schools like the Doon School, Wellams, Modern School, Vasant Vihar, Auckland House School, and many others brought in interdisciplinarity, whereas for students could take up biology, psychology, economics, and geography. They could take up physics, maths, history, and literature. So this interdisciplinarity had already become a choice, but now it has become mandatory. It's not going to be easy to implement because there are problems of timetabling, plus there'll be problems of hiring additional teachers for the additional subjects. So there'll be a cost involved. So what schools have done, who have already brought in interdisciplinarity, is to kind of limit it to certain subject choices and say this is option 1, so group 1, group 2, group 3, and give the most important interdisciplinary choices as they grow. Recognizing and identifying the unique capabilities of each student, internships and community service, and integration of vocational education, which is very important. Now for all of this, educational and career guidance from class 9 onwards will be very important. It's not mandatory, but it is a prerequisite to empower students to make choices. So for the UP government, as a member of the steering committee on this topic, I have recommended that all the 2,500 secondary schools of the UP government should have a career counseling cell. Each cell should have a trained career counselor. And career development, I have given as a note, is not just about educational and career guidance. It's about intellectual and academic development, social development, economic development, emotional development. You know, it's a holistic approach to the development of each student, along with identifying that students' aptitudes, interests, talents, aspirations. So it's a process. This becomes very important within the framework of the new education policy. And I would request each of the schools represented here to think of how they can introduce a career guidance cell in the school, wherein existing teachers could be trained in the entire approach of career guidance. Also, it'll be important to have a curriculum on career counseling and guidance, which can be integrated into the syllabus, which looks at holistic development. I will share with you a curriculum that we had developed and which has been implemented very successfully from grade 8 onwards. So I'll share the outline of this curriculum, which I think will be a nice framework for you to see how you can implement it in your schools within your existing resources. Now for the reduction of curriculum, very well defined, that the curriculum in all subjects will be reduced to its core essentials. You'll not have to memorize a lot of principles and theories, facts and figures. Just the core essentials of what that particular subject or theme or topic is all about, the essence of it. The focus, therefore, will be on critical thinking, inquiry, why, how, what, when, what next, what should be, discovery, discussion, analysis-based teaching and learning methods for holistic education. Interactive classes, Generation Z is bored, is easily distracted if the student has to just sit and listen, if it's chalk and talk, if it's a dictation. Involve them in an interactive class, group discussions, and you'll find them really coming up with a lot of great ideas of being engaged. So interactive classrooms would be very, very vital. Experiential learning, fun, creative, collaborative, exploratory, go out of the classroom. Why study botany and geography sitting in the room? Move out. Why study any subject just within the four walls of the classroom? So I think critical thinking, interactive classes, experiential learning to emphasize the core essentials is absolutely a brilliant idea. And this incorporates the best practices of Education 4.0. And these are the points we had also submitted. Then we have emphasis on digital literacy, coding, computational thinking, use of technology and ICT integration in the teaching learning process, which would mean blended learning. So what this would require is infrastructure upgradation, which has a cost, and a lot of orientation and reorientation, skilling and upskilling and training of teachers. It is for this reason that the new education policy has suggested certain clusters of schools, which I'll discuss about, where there can be sharing of resources and which can be used as community centers by students. Then there'll be multiple pathways to learning, both formal and informal. For example, presently, students who are following maybe CBSE or ISC or state board, who are not very good at a particular subject, can take it up through the National Open School, NIOS. But not many know about it, and the schools often don't facilitate this informal pathway, the open school pathway. Also, universities like Delhi University don't accept your math through NIOS as an eligibility. So we are going to make sure that the UGC changes its norms as per the NEP guidelines. Moreover, today, I can say that YouTube is a university. So much learning happens through YouTube. So much learning happens through platforms like Khan Academy, Coursera.org, and others, Udemy. So these will also be recognized as upgrading the knowledge and learning of students. It will not just be the formal bit, but the informal will also be taken into account and encouraged. Holistic development of the student, no separation of curricular, extracurricular, arts and science, sports and vocational crafts. Here, we would require some very specialized teachers and training of existing ones. And a curriculum, this is also very, very important. It figures throughout the policy, a curriculum to integrate Indian culture and ethos. It is there throughout, and we would have to bring this in about the richness of the Indian culture and ethos. So there's an emphasis on mental and physical health and well-being, which is mandatory for students to acquire skills in health and nutrition, physical education, fitness, wellness and sports. Now, this is not just going to be on the document, it's going to be a checklist for assessment. Every school will have to integrate this. An inclusive and caring culture, including contemporary subjects in schools at middle and second stages like design thinking, holistic health, organic living, environmental education, global citizenship education. Isn't this also exciting? Now, another very interesting point is, and this particular aspect has been already introduced by international bodies, from grades 9 to 12, all subjects will be offered at two levels, standard level and higher level. IB or International Baccalaureate has it. This is really great because, for example, a student may not be high on math aptitude, but can take it as a standard level subject. So subjects that you want to do, but you may not be great at, can be taken as standard level subjects, or subjects which would fulfill eligibility criteria for further studies can be standard level. And you can take up your choice of higher level subjects, which could be across the board. Rootedness and pride in India and its rich, diverse culture. This figures yet again, as I've told you, is throughout the document. Rootedness and pride in India, its rich, diverse culture. And when we talk about its rich, diverse culture, it has looked at it very, very deeply from every possible aspect, and it's not uni-focused. Then standard setting and accreditation is also very important. There will be a state school standard authority. These standards will have to be identified and prescribed. And in the identification of the minimum standards, there'll be wide consultation. Within that consultation, experts will be included from all fields. So here I would request your schools to ensure that there is representation in the State School Standards Authority, because then you will be able to ensure equity as well as equality. Minimal professional and quality standards will have to be prescribed as per NEP 2020. So minimal. It's given such a big, vast and diverse wish list. We have to look at what are the essentials and bring them in. Minimal professional will definitely be the B.Ed and the specific teacher selection process that I mentioned. And this is school quality assessment and accreditation framework, another important point. And for the school quality assessment, it will be as per the key aspects of NEP and the timeline. For instance, by 2024, interdisciplinarity has to come into all schools. So these quality assessments will be there. The fact that you have implemented the teaching learning process, so that would have to be properly documented, because there will be periodic health checkups, a qualitative audit by SCRT and NCRT. SCRT are the state bodies. One of the points here is that the approach is going to be one of trust, one of transparency, wherein every school would be required to put up on its website the minimum standards that they are adhering to. So they expect every school to just do a self-audit as well, to track the development as per NEP, to be transparent about what they're doing. So it's going to be, again, not a very dictatorial approach to it all. It's going to be flexible and democratic, and that is what the document states, flexible and democratic. So let's look at the structure now. The structure will be 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. The foundational stage will be 5 and it will be plain activity based. Prep stage will be 3. Again, play, discovery, activity based interactive classes. Middle stage will focus on experiential learning in science, maths, social science, humanities. And the secondary stage from classes 9 to 12 will focus on multidisciplinary study, critical thinking, and informed student choice of subjects. So students will be guided and they'll have to have opportunities for making informed decisions. And here again, educational and career guidance and counseling will be very important. So the objective is also to transform the culture of assessment. It is no longer going to be the fearful focus on securing high marks, on securing marks based on what you memorized and what you wrote, on securing marks even if you write what your thoughts are. So there's going to be continuous tracking of learning outcomes for each child. And therefore, for classroom teaching, for every subject, the teaching plan should include learning outcomes. Board exams are going to be more flexible with assessment of essential skills. And interestingly, every student will be given 2 opportunities to take the exam and use the best marks. Assessment will focus on core concepts and higher order foundational skills, thinking skills. AI-based software will track the progress of students. So this is a kind of software which every school will have to bring into place to be able to track students. Then there'll be national assessment curriculum, self-assessment, and a national testing agency will offer high quality common aptitude test for a later stage. So all the multiple tests after +2 will be replaced by one test. And my feeling is that gradually all testing will go. There'll be ease of access with multiple pathways into higher education. So there'll be examinations in grades 1 to 8, 3, 5 to 8 to track achievement. And here, the testing will focus on learning outcomes. Move away from rote learning, and the results of the school examination will be for development purpose, for continuous monitoring and improvement of the child. So it's a very empowering approach to assessment. The system from 9 to 12 will be also reformed, including the board exams. Board exams will be made easier. They'll test core capacities and competencies. Various viable models are yet going to be explored. Guidelines will be prepared by NCRT, SCRT, and other boards of assessment. Other boards of assessment being, for instance, the ICSE board, the ISC board. And PARAK is an interesting term, which means Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge for Holistic Development. This is something new. So a performance assessment review and analysis of knowledge for holistic development will be designed. I had already mentioned that beginning with mathematics, all subjects can be offered at 2 levels, and that will be brought in even for assessments. So what is the timeline for implementation? The timeline for implementation is by 2022, the NEP norms for class 9 will come in. By 22-23 for class 10, 23-24 class 11, which means that by 1923, 2.5 years from now, interdisciplinary subject choices new assessment systems, and the new recruitment systems will be in place. By 2024-25, class 12, and so the new board exam pattern will start thereafter. So for 10th, it will happen in 2023, and for 12th, it will happen 25-26. So it's a pretty nice, I would say, timeline for implementation to be ready. This is something which has caused concern, the school complexes and clusters. So the government will set up Bal Bhavans, Samajik Chetna Kendras, but the school complexes concept is one where one secondary school will head other schools in the region. Also, there'll be public-private partnerships for resource sharing, greater efficiency, planning. There'll be a separate government body for school clusters. So, for instance, if any of your schools leads a cluster, you would be playing a very important role in the governance of that cluster. So there'll be pairing of schools, that is a public-private partnership aspect. Here again, having read through the document, I find there's a lot of flexibility. Nothing will be imposed. It's not mandatory. And we have to ensure that while the scheme of school complexes and clusters is being designed, we participate in it and make suggestions. All the schools present here are already contributing a lot for the education of the less privileged. I know many schools have implemented the 25% quota for the less privileged. They've also implemented wonderful education schemes by bringing in, let us say, evening classes. I know many of the schools present here are doing plenty, but this is going to be more formalized. It's going to be more structured with governing bodies in place. So it's important to be engaged in the designing of this so that we make sure that nothing is an imposition and that it is not arbitrary. So here, again, this is an interesting term that has been used for the regulatory framework, a light but tight regulatory framework to ensure integrity, transparency, and resource efficiency through audit, public disclosure. Innovation will be encouraged, out-of-the-box ideas will be encouraged, and so also will school autonomy. This is a very important point. School autonomy will remain in place, but emphasis is going to be good governance, empowerment of all stakeholders. So I liked the word transparency there. And I think for this light but tight regulatory framework, it'll be important to have structures in place because there will be a reporting system which will not be as stringent as it is today for, say, the CBSE boards, but there will have to be a record keeping of what aspects have been implemented and what remain to be implemented as per the essential guidelines. I've talked about standard setting and accreditation. And here again, I say it'll be participatory and it'll be important for all the schools to find representation in ensuring that the standard setting and accreditation is done in a democratic way, which takes into account all the needs of that particular area. For higher education, I'll quickly go through it. There's going to be establishment of a Higher Education Commission of India, which will be an umbrella body, but this will not include medical and legal education. I think it's a very good idea because there's a lot of confusion presently. and there are a lot of malpractices. Then public and private institutions will be governed by the same set of rules. This is of higher education. The undergraduate degree will be of 3 or 4 durations with multiple exit opportunities. So if you move out after 1 year of education, you'll get a diploma and you can get back to complete your graduation. Colleges will be mandated to give certificate after 1 year, diploma after 2 years, bachelor's degree after 3 years. So this is very, very nice. If you drop out today, you come without any credential, but there will be certification at every level now. It'll be a multidisciplinary education system with changed eligibility criteria for a smooth transition from school education to tertiary education, and this recommendation was given by me because I discovered that there were many anomalies when it came to students moving out of schools for higher education. So now there'll be changed eligibility criteria, which will be much more flexible. I want to share with you that minorities have been mentioned once in a very specific way. They've been mentioned under the heading addressing disparities. So it says, and I read, that the socio-economic disadvantaged groups, SEDGs, which include gender identities, including transgender. So transgender has come in here. Socio-cultural identities. Within socio-cultural identities, we have SC, ST, other backward classes, and minorities. Geographical identities, disabilities, socioeconomic conditions. So here it says in another paragraph that minorities are underrepresented in school and higher education. And this has to be addressed. Minorities and all the SEDGs have to be given access, even if it is through scholarships. So I think this is a very positive aspect which has come in. And before we move ahead, I would like to take questions because I have presented broadly what is there in this document of roughly 66 pages from the Government of India. And I'll be sharing this document, an e-copy of it, with all of you because it'll be important to go through it and be important to go through it to be able to address the many misconceptions which have been floated about the new education policy and the fact that if there's anything you wish to correct, if you want to have a voice or a suggestion, you can still do it in the implementation of the policy in your respective states. So with that, I'll open it for questions and answers. We've completed this whole aspect in under an hour. And then I'll share with you that at the Institute for Career Studies, we have brought out a cutting edge app. It is called the ICS Career GPS, ICS Career Global Positioning System. It helps students to identify their core aptitudes, interests, the careers that will be best suited for them. And this is it. I'll quickly show you. So it helps to discover and it gives them career clarity in 3 easy steps of no informed plan. All of them get a shortlisted careers that they would be best at through a unique algorithm. Then for the careers they've got, they can explore further to see which would be the top one for them and how they can bring them all into their career portfolio as building blocks, as multiple career innings in their journey of life. Then it has courses and campuses globally, career specializations for each field, as well as the post-COVID careers, pathways, multiple pathways to your careers. So it's a very unique app. The next part of the app will soon be introduced, which will be the College Connect and then the Career Connect. So it's going to be a journey from class to campus to career and beyond. Right now, it's just very useful for everybody from grades 10 right through those who are working with a lot of information. So this is in the App Store, Google Play Store, free download. And I want to say it'll help students to navigate a very complex route. It'll help teachers and parents as well. Let's open it for questions and answers now.
Ma'am, there is a question. There has been a lot of confusion about the medium of teaching. Schools will be asked to teach in local languages. Is that true? No English medium schools?
No, that is not true at all. As I mentioned, the language aspect is not mandatory. It is advisable that you bring in the mother tongue or the local language if possible. And I mentioned that Palikudam had done it. So it is not mandatory. Even in, say, UP, which is a Hindi speaking state, the government has set up English medium higher secondary schools because they realize the importance of it. So the English medium schools don't have to worry at all because this language aspect is not mandatory. So rest assured, you'll not have any problem.
Next question is, if a teacher is already working in a school as permanent, does the teacher needs to give TET test?
That has not been suggested. It is for the fresh entrants. If you're already there, you already have experience, and you're a permanent teacher, you would have to go for a lot of training programs to upgrade your knowledge and skills. So yes, you'll have to participate in a certain prescribed number of training programs.
Now, do PGT have to qualify TET also?
Not PGT, the teacher, TET, teacher eligibility test, everybody will have to do, even PGTs.
What training courses should a psychology teacher do to work as a certified counselor?
So to work as a certified counselor, you have many training programs. One, of course, is conducted by the NCERT, which is a very good program. It's an online program. But other than that, you have a certification by IGNOU in counseling, and the Institute for Career Studies has a 3-month accelerated postgraduate training course in career guidance and counseling, which looks at psychological counseling as well.
From class 9, a child has to opt subjects, and after implementation, if a child is in class 11, will he continue with the same pattern?
When this norm comes in, then for class 11 and 12, the student will have choices across commerce, science, arts. Those barriers will not exist. So the student will have a choice to continue, but there will be newer subjects to pick up. For instance, psychology is not taught in grade 9 or 10. Sociology is not taught in grade 9 or 10. It's a subject of 11 and 12. So the opportunity to pick up new subjects and across the board will be possible.
Mr. Aftab wants to know that after the implementation, will foreign universities make education expensive?
Actually, the foreign universities presently come under another law, and that law governs the amount of fees they charge. Also, I want you to know that presently the bill to recognize the delivery of degrees by foreign universities in India is still in Parliament. It has not been passed. So what can happen is that if you go and study abroad, the Association of Indian Universities recognizes some of the universities abroad and their degrees for further education in India or for employment in government jobs in India. So Association of Indian University has a list of recognized universities and their degrees. All of them are not recognized. And foreign universities presently cannot establish their offshore campus in India. That recognition has not happened. So what universities are doing is collaborations. And the collaborations which are allowed are that you study 2 years in India and 2 years abroad, and then your degree is recognized. You get a dual degree from an Indian university and a degree from that foreign university. So right now, there are many restrictions for the functioning of foreign universities in India. However, students are going online and taking courses, bachelor's courses, master's courses, which are not so expensive. These are recognized by the private sector, but not by government yet.
Next question. Since schools have multiple career groups, how many counselors could be engaged in a single school?
It depends on the number of students. So ideally, one would recommend 2 to 3 counselors who would be able to guide them with regard to specializations in science, commerce, arts. But one is enough. We have worked with over 500 schools over 35 years, wherein each of the school has one counseling coordinator. Even big schools like, say, the Shiv Nadar School, Noida or Gurgaon, or let us say La Martiniere, Kolkata, Auckland House, Bishop Cotton, they have one counselor, one coordinator. But this has to be more of a full-time engagement. At present, it isn't. So we'll need more depending on the resources available, that is the human resources available. Presently in most schools, a teacher plays the role of a teacher counselor. Some have hired the counselor, but that counselor is a psychological counselor who we have trained into career counseling. So right now, very few schools have experienced educational and career counselors, and that will become a necessity. And there'll be 5 million students who will require this sort of counseling. So career counseling is going to be the next big career wave.
Greetings from Kashmir. Thank you for clearing our doubts. One query, any reference to online teaching learning in the NEP 2020?
As I mentioned, they have encouraged informal learning. So informal learning is online. Also, when they talk about ICT, I guess with the corona type of situation, which may continue or which may come up later, God forbid, hybrid ICT teaching learning process will be in existence. So hybrid will be both offline and online, and this will continue.
What would be the role of fee fixation committees set by governments?
This is not clearly stated in the NEP. And I think it's important to look at it because the schools which come under the Delhi government are facing a lot of problems. I'm on the board of Nirmal Bharatiya School, which is a world-class school giving cost-effective education. But even then, they are questioned every time the fees raised and nominally raised. So there's a lot of interference with regard to fees. The NEP doesn't have any mention of it. It talks about resource sharing, access to education. So I think as far as the fees are concerned, a lot will depend on the state government and what the state government decides.
The two questions related to TET. Do the teachers have to pass teachers eligibility test again if they're already working on regular basis for some
No, they will not have to pass this test, but there'll be advanced level training that will be mandatory, which you would have to attend.
And do we appear for TET as we are not permanent in one school?
When the TET comes in, you will need to appear for it. It will take a while for the TET to come in, another 2 to 3 years.
Can you please share some insights on avenues for specially abled children?
For specially able children, we have to see what their talent is. For instance, there was a student we guided recently who was very good at physical activities. And we guided him into becoming a yoga instructor. And he's doing so well. Some are good at art, design, computers. So there are a lot of possibilities for them depending on what they would be best at. One of them, who I guided years ago, he has set up very, very good institution for differently abled kids. He did his master's in social work from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and he has set this up. So there are possibilities of entrepreneurship, possibilities of teaching, art, design, banking. So depending on the competencies, we need to identify and then train them. And I want you to know that the new education policy has also brought in two very important points. Number one, the identification of talented students and special training for them. Number two, identification of differently abled children and training for them.
Will ICSC, CBSE boards and government school syllabus be the same?
Actually, the syllabus would be based on the guidelines of NEP 2020. So there's no mention that there'll only be one board. So as of now, as presently the existing education policy and system is being implemented by multiple boards, the same will happen. But they would have to incorporate the guidelines of the syllabus and the pattern of examination. So those guidelines would have to be followed. I was talking to a very eminent educationist just yesterday to clarify some doubts. And I said that you're a CBSE school. So NCRT textbooks are not the best. And a lot of them have misrepresented facts, particularly some of the history textbooks. She says we are free to choose whatever books we want, whichever material we wish to use, but we use the NCRT books because they give us guidelines of what the important contours of that particular subject are. So I think, and I see Vidhu nodding, so I think it's important to keep track of what the NCRT contours or parameters are, and then do anything else. You're free to choose your material, your resource people, the delivery mechanisms. So that is what I would recommend, that yes, there will be flexibility, boards will be still existing, but they'll have to follow the norms and guidelines, which are wonderful guidelines, I'm sure you'll agree, of NEP 2020.
If entrance test introduced after class 12, don't you think the average and below average students will find difficult to qualify to get admission into art and science colleges?
Oh, there'll not be any entrance test for colleges. It'll be for professional courses, for vocational courses, and they'll not be complicated. There would be tests that would assess your logical ability, reasoning ability, language ability, ability in that particular field. So I think students will be well prepared. And here a very important point is that the journey through school under NEP 2020 is aimed at ensuring that students will not need tuition and coaching. It has clearly mentioned no tuition and no coaching, because every student is expected to be empowered with his or her respective set of aptitudes, of talents, of understanding, of knowledge to be able to navigate in the direction of his choice or her choice of making a career by choice, not chance. Thank
Mr.
you.
Anand has left us with one comment. I would like to compliment Mrs. Das on the excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. So got the comment. Thank you.
Next question. Does the NEP only have effect on government schools, or does it affect both CBSE and ICSE as well?
NEP will be universal. It'll be for all schools, public, private, government, all schools. So NEP is going to be covering private schools as well as government schools. And they have throughout stated that both government and private schools, all schools will have to implement.
Could you please explain how to set up career counseling cell in the schools?
To have a well-equipped career counseling cell in a school, one would require a dedicated space. And in that space, it would be important to have at least one computer and some very good literature on careers, some good prospectuses, and some good reading material for students, some wonderful charts on display, which at a glance give you the different career pathways, the subjects and their specializations. So attractively done space with a lot of charts for information, reading material, a space where the students can come and research and talk to the career counselor, where parents can come and talk to the career counselor, and where all the records of the students are maintained from grade 8 upwards.
What is the appropriate age to introduce career counseling in the school?
Actually, I've asked this question very often, and I say there's no appropriate age for career counseling because there's so many child prodigies. So if there's a child prodigy, we have to start guiding them from an early stage. For instance, great at sports. So how do you train your sports skill or music skill or acting skill? Great at a subject. How do we give you a fast track in the subject? It may be mathematics, it may be art or design, or it may be physics, it may be economics, history, anything. However, for a formal approach to it, for ICSE schools, it's useful at 8 because students have to choose subjects in 9 and 10. And there are many misconceptions about subject choices. So the ICSE has given options to drop science, take up computer science, to drop math. So there's a lot of flexibility of subject choice. ICSE has been a very progressive board that way. So for such students, counseling is needed in grade 8. Otherwise, from 9 onwards, it is ideal.
Most of the people say that the entrance tests are based on CBSE syllabus. So they do not take science in ICSE 11 and 12. Will NEP of any help in that?
Yes, there'll be a completely different approach to entrance tests because of the different approach to acquiring knowledge, applying knowledge, and integrating knowledge, connecting the dots. Is going to be a completely different approach, and there's going to be a body that's going to examine the ideal testing mechanisms.
Will the implementation of NEP will benefit the present dropouts to complete their course to get the degree?
Definitely, because they would have then got recognition to continue their education, to carry on with the year 2 or 3 and complete their education. So there will be a possibility.
If schools are equipped to teach differently able students, can they refuse admission to such students?
If they're equipped and they're already doing it, then I don't think the school will refuse. So I'm associated with schools which have differently educated children who they teach. Now, some schools have a parallel system where those, say if there's a learning disability, they tackle the learning disability at a different level. So supposing the student has a learning difficulty in the sciences, so that is taught separately. But for other subjects, the student is integrated with the school. So there are various ways of reaching out to differently abled kids. But by and large, at some point, if they're integrated with the students, other students, then I think both emotionally and socially, for all-round development, for empathizing, it's important for them to also interact. But it depends on the school, its resources, its teachers. None of this is going to be mandatory. So you could continue with what you're doing.
If a child is in class 9th and now would have appeared for the board in class 10th in 2022, it is suggested that class 10th boards will not happen. Please suggest.
Class 10 boards will happen. and they will happen some years from now. So I've given you the timeline. If I'm not mistaken, 2023-24 class 10 boards will happen, but it will be a different assessment. I will be sending you this document, and I think it comes the other way around. So the National Education Policy document. Pooja, if you have the link, perhaps you could put it here itself. We got it specially for all of you so that you could have it. Yes, Pooja, next question.
There's a lot of fear created by private schools that there'll be a lot of interference in literally all management matters. Example, admission, donations, book selection, principal selection, teacher selection, PF, gratuity, etc.
Actually, that has been existing fear and experience for schools, but I think the new education policy will have systems in place which will ensure greater transparency, and none of this should happen. If it happens, there are mechanisms for reporting malpractices. So I don't think one should be afraid, but one should just follow the guidelines in a very sincere way and keep records of all that is mandatory that you are putting into place. So that is important.
Do you think government schools will be restructured or equipped in this short period?
Government schools will have to be restructured, and I agree, it's a very short period. They need much more funding, and that is why they're looking at some support from private institutions, and that is where you'll have to be cautious about how much support is possible. Please make sure that you do not overextend yourself and you do what you can do comfortably, which you have been already doing. So I think there should be no fear. I think it's important to be part of the process, to have a voice. And if at any point there's any pressure, any malpractice, you have access to getting it resolved.
Should schools recruit qualified and certified teachers for vocational courses starting from grade 6?
Definitely, it will be important. It will be an additional cost, but we need to budget for it and see how we can do it. Otherwise, this is where sharing of resources comes in. There could be one teacher specialist who could look at a cluster of 4 or 5 schools and go to each school, say, twice in a week for some hours. So this is where resource sharing will be very important. And this is where your existing relationship and goodwill with your neighboring schools will be very important.
What are the possible courses can be introduced for vocational training in the middle school?
A lot of courses can be introduced for vocational training depending on the requirements of the student. So, for example, I know schools that have introduced culinary arts. Of course, art and design labs are there, but if art and design is there, we could introduce UI and UX, which has a lot of scope, which is user interface and user experience. We could introduce AI-related courses and courses like digital marketing, courses like analytics, which are very much in demand and students pick up very quickly. Design thinking. Entrepreneurship would be a very, very useful course to bring in, because more and more entrepreneurial skills will be required in future. So these are some of the vocational courses that can be introduced.
Currently, preschool is a separate entity. Will it be a part of formal schooling after implementation?
No, they will follow the structure in the block. So your school may have a preschool, it may not have it. So it will be flexible. So presently there are students move into formal schooling, and there are some preschools which are part of a complete school setup. So that flexibility will remain.
Is TET only eligible for 7 years?
It doesn't say so, but what it clearly states is that every teacher would have to upgrade knowledge and skills, and they will prescribe the norms for that upgradation. Presently, this happens for higher education. Every lecturer, every professor has to upgrade his or her knowledge and skills So for example, you do not become professor till you have completed a certain number of training programs, presented papers, done some research work, written papers. So there are norms in higher education. Similarly, there'll be norms for school for continuous training of teachers.
Will the schools have the liberty to switch between the boards?
Of course, as of now. In fact, if you wish, any school can switch a board as you're doing now. There's nothing mentioned in the report about that. And you can even go in for A level or IB. There's nothing written about adherence to one specific board. In fact, the NEP has said that they have drawn from all the boards, the best practices of the national boards, state boards, international boards, to bring together this document for us.
CBSE has been asked to align their curriculum with ICSE. Is it true? Secondly, would there be a similar request for the state boards as well?
You know, I want to share some good news with you. The curriculum had been aligned some years ago. And the curriculum was aligned years ago because of the demand of students and parents and other stakeholders that the entrance exams for medical and engineering were primarily based on the CBSE curriculum, and the ISC students were at a disadvantage. So the members of both the boards got together and the curriculum was aligned. And there's nothing which comes which is beyond the curriculum of CBSE or ISC.
Please throw light on 4-year B.Ed course immediately after class 12th. Will it be a degree course?
Yes, B.Ed is Bachelor's of Education. So it will be a degree course, complete +2, 4 years, B.Ed. It will be a wonderful approach to entering the profession of teaching. It's a great idea. It's like you do +2, then you do a 4-year B.Tech for engineering. In the same way, you do a 4-year Bachelor's of Education for teaching.
From which standard is choice of subjects offered to students?
Under NEP, the flexibility of choice would be from grade 11 onwards. Till 10, students will study everything. Till 10, they'll study everything. But if they are under the board of ICSE, which allows them to take up different subjects after grade 8 and 9 and 10, whether that will continue or not is not stated. So I think this is where ISC will have to ensure that this particular system continues, because it was of immense help to students who did not have the aptitude for the science or the math subjects. And because they were given other options, they did extremely well academically. So ISC will have to negotiate that this system continue.
We take admission at age of 4+ into nursery. Do you suggest to introduce pre-nursery class at 3+? Is it compulsory?
Not at all compulsory. You can just continue the way you're doing right now.
If a student choose physics as one of the subject and other to be history, how history will help in his physics subject?
So this is a very interesting question. When we talk about interdisciplinary subjects, how they help us is to develop both the left brain and the right brain. They help us to connect the dots. So let me tell you that there's a new specialization in history which will incorporate the sciences like maths, and physics could be part of it, for predicting future trends in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, a VUCA world. So if you come in with a logical mind and you studied physics and math and you studied history, you will be able to predict the future more accurately, because history is a study of the past to understand the present and predict the future. In this complex world, fast changing world, if you bring in mathematical algorithms, you can be more accurate, so that your decisions then are more accurate and you can have a plan A, B, and C in place. So there interdisciplinarity which helps you to connect the dots, to develop a creative, logical mind. And there are also subjects which come together, which yield many specializations. Like if you bring psychology and biology together, there's cognitive science, there is neuroscience. You bring economics and psychology, you have behavioral economics, behavioral finance, and there are n numbers of these combinations which are going to be more and more in demand.
Will the government raise the share of education in allocation of budgets for such enormous multiple facilities to be provided in schools, especially the government ones?
Yes, there is a discussion to raise it to 9%. And there's also mention of having philanthropic people contribute towards education, towards building of infrastructure and so on. So yes, government is aware of it and they're going to see how they can fund all of this, because a lot of money will be required to make this happen. So I think with the last question, I thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. We have had a star-studded audience of educators, of members of the Board of Government, headed by the Right Honorable Bishop Samantha Roy in our midst. And I think it's been a very, very engaging discussion because of your questions. I do hope you found this useful. Don't hesitate to be in touch. I'll ask Pooja to put my email ID, personal ID, amritadas@icsmail.in. Do send in your queries if you have any, and let us all remain connected, because together we can make a difference. Thank you all very much and be in touch.
Thank you, Dr. Amrita Das. It was indeed an afternoon well spent. And may I invite Mrs. Sunita John to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, Dr. Das. Good afternoon, sir. And good afternoon, everyone present here today. On behalf of the Most Reverend Dr. P.K. Samantha Roy, Chairman, Diocesan Education Association, the Diocese of Amritsar, all the distinguished guests, participants of this seminar, I am privileged to extend a vote of thanks to Dr. Das, Founder Director, Institute of Career Studies, for wonderfully decoding the national education policy in such a comprehensive and simple manner. Though most of us have been very apprehensive of what the implementation of the national education policy would entail for both the staff and the students, I think most of us can now say that our worst fears have been put to rest, in that we will be equipped to handle the challenges that come our way. We need to be open to change for the betterment of our students and schools. I would like to thank the Most Reverend Dr. P.K. Samantha Roy for requesting Dr. Das to conduct this seminar. Thank you, sir, for always understanding our concerns and supporting and encouraging us to keep learning. I would also like to thank Mrs. Vidhupriya Chakravarti, Secretary, Diocesan Education Association, for coordinating this event. Thank you, staff and fellow principals, for your presence. In conclusion, I would like to thank the ICS team, particularly Mr. Vineet and Pooja, whom I could hear in the background, and of course, Dr. Das, for enlightening us in such a special way. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, all the participants from across the country, because now you can be the ones to enlighten others, to understand this, and to ensure maximum impact. Thank you all again. All the best.